Yes.
I have no idea what happened. Sorry about that. So let's go back just to the notes and get to the notes. So so yeah, that's an interesting point, right? That the among the biggest recipients of these common agricultural policy subsidies include, of all people, the aristocrats in Spain, because they still, because of the ancient history of Spain and the suppression of the revolution in Spain, that they're still getting tremendous amounts of benefits. So, you know, that's always been a criticism, I think, of people like Varoufakis and others, that the European Union was fundamentally founded under American hegemony, and that was focused on minimizing radical change in Spain and Greece. Oh, and you know what? It's telling me I have to reactivate my my use of Word here. Let me see if I can do that without taking too much time. But let me see if I can just do that right now. I think you can see the screen, but maybe I'll just do this and then see how long it takes. It's going to take too much time. Maybe I can just get away from doing this, so I don't need to. I can just focus on this. So Greece has been a member state dominating international media headlines since 2010. You know, that was when the financial crisis really hit Greece, and Greece is a fascinating test case for Europeanization ideational terms, Europeanization institutional terms, and Europeanization strategic terms. So strategic terms refers to the international environment in the Cold War. Keep in mind, I think I might have mentioned once in class that the European Commission, when assessing Greece's application to join the European Union, the European Commission said, well, at the time was the European Economic Community, that Greece is not economically ready, that the Greek government has not instituted the policy reforms it needs to undertake in order to be able to function in the European Union. And European Economic Community at the time. This is in the 1980s. And the other member states of the European Union decided to bring Greece in. And they wanted Greece in because they wanted to stabilize the new young democracy that came to power after the Greek colonels, the Greek military junta, was overthrown in 1974 when, does this sound familiar? It attempted to unify the Greek nation in Cyprus with Greece. That Cyprus was part of the Greek nation. The territory of Cyprus is a Greek island, and even though 1/3 of the population living on Cyprus are ethnic Turks, and are Muslims and speak Turkish, that's part of the Greek motherland, and we will unify the unredeemed part of Greece. This is irredentism, like we're seeing it work now with Russia towards Ukraine, and China towards Taiwan, and North and South Korea towards each other, and historically Italy. Oh, let me see. I have to turn on my my speaker here, and I have to restart my Zoom. So my Bluetooth. Sorry, so that you can hear me. So 2, 3, 4, I can hear you, I should say. And so okay. So I think you can hear me. And let me stop the share here. And let's go to the microphone. Okay, so you can hear me, and hopefully I can hear you. Okay. Okay, all right, so we're set to go here. So, you know, that was during the Cold War. And so, you know, Greece didn't carry out fully all the economic reforms. Can we blame the political and economic crisis of 2010 on the failure of Greece to carry out fully the reforms that were promised in the or expected in joining the European Economic Community? Well, it's hard to say. I mean, who can say for fully whether or not that was an issue? But I do know, for example, that we heard this again in the case of Bulgaria. Bulgaria, another Balkan country on the northern a boundary of on the northern border of Greece. Also has a history of being under imperial domination by the Ottoman Turkish Empire for hundreds of years. And, Bulgarians and Greeks and Serbs, they will always tell you about how their problems come from the fact that, well, for 400 or 500 years, we were under the Turkish yoke. We were under the Turkish slavery, the part of the Ottoman Empire. And that made us corrupt and backward. And so, of course, they scapegoat the Turks. And of course, if you're a Turkish minority in Bulgaria, you might not appreciate that, but being told that you're a descendant of traitors, of occupiers, and you're despised and hated. And that's a fact in the Balkans, not just in Greece and Bulgaria, but throughout the Balkans, that they blame the Turks and the Ottoman Empire for their problems. And so, so Greece was brought in during the Cold War when it really wasn't ready, and Bulgaria in 2007 also was brought in early before it was really, the European Commission was happy or was ready to approve its membership, because it was, as reported in the Financial Times, that otherwise Russia would become too influential in Bulgaria. The Russian money, Russian investment, Russian black economic actors, Russian oligarchs would use their money and the corruption in Bulgaria to increase Russia's influence. So Bulgaria had to be brought into the European Union in 2007 before it was ready, because it was to counter Russia. So again, how strong is this anti-Russian focus? Does Putin have any kind of validity in his claims that basically, again, as we said earlier, the European Union and NATO, they're two sides of the same coin. It's just the European Union is the civilian and economic side of American domination and hegemony, and American domination and hegemony is inherently anti-Russian in his viewpoint. And they're moving now into Ukraine and turning those people living in Ukrainians into anti-Russians, supposedly. That's his worldview. Making them into Ukrainians that are pro-Western, Ukrainians that don't like Russian history, Russian culture, that don't view themselves as Russian, and making them into Russian, making themselves into Ukrainians with the incentives of joining the European Union, right? And again, in regard to your midterm paper, you're supposed to evaluate the extent to which we can really view the European Union as a peace strategy for Europe if it's built upon unintentionally, but functionally with this shared common scapegoat target, the Russia, that we have to, as long as we have this common enemy, it's much easier to do European integration. And as I said, I mean, people note that right now, as I already mentioned in another class, right, that one professor in one of these Zoom seminars said, we should thank Ukrainians because they've reminded us how much we have in common, we Westerners, we European Union and NATO allies, how much we value democracy, how much we're showing the strength of democracy, and on and on and on. But there are legacies from this Cold War intervention that are continuing to the present. And you even see here, remember this chapter is written by Dimitris Papadimitriou and Sotirios Zartalodis. And they're Greeks, all right? Those are Greek names. And he mentions, on the other hand, it retains core elements of the Ottoman legacy. That's a nice way of saying the Turkish yoke, the Turkish slavery. He says, and I've heard this so many times in the Balkans, in Bulgaria and elsewhere, Greece lies a geopolitical location that puts it on the boundary areas in the east-west continuum, that it's a focus of battle and contestation between Eastern and Western civilization. He says at times of crisis, and this is, again, trying to deal with nationalism, but not really being fully, not having a clear theoretical framework for explaining it. It's really important, right? But at times of crisis, this dual stereotype, right? It's a stereotype. And so let me go back to the screen because my screen moved. And I found, by the way, that the internet in Korea is much better than the internet in the United States. I mean, when I was home in the United States in January, February, the internet would go down, like it went down here. And I was at my brother's house using his Wi-Fi. He works from home. So I'm getting this statement that my internet connection is unstable. Okay, just to go on here. So he claims economic crisis in 2010 has led to major changes in Greek politics. It cost the Senate to defeat 7 different prime ministers.
5 different general elections, and, and the rise of Alexander Tsipras, who I just mentioned, I showed you in that YouTube video. He became prime minister, started his party, largely based upon protesting and rejecting the austerity mechanism, the austerity package, the conditions placed on getting this huge loan of 350 billion euros from the Europeans predominantly. But then once he became prime minister, he agreed to it anyway, and he lost his job as prime minister, and now he's doing other things, including in Europe. But he's evidently, I don't encounter much discussion of him becoming prime minister again or running for prime minister's office. But he pops up on Democracy Now! I've seen him at least, well, more than, I think at least twice, right? So the limits of the country's Europeanization in terms of limits, instruments, and effects of Europeanization on the scrutiny on the scale impact of the crisis is still not resolved. Keep in mind, Greece is, it's got this reputation of being a very, very weak state, and that weakness shows up in the form of corruption. You can't get Greeks to pay their taxes. That's an overstatement, but they're less likely to pay their taxes than, say, as I mentioned, Germans or Japanese are, right? And Greece has been a member of the Western Alliance since the beginning of the Cold War, and it's been part of the European Union since I think 1984. Since 1984, and still, despite being part of the European Union for that's 34 years, in 2010, the Greek state was still corrupt, was still so ineffective that their statistics were unreliable. The financial crisis emerged while the Greek government was giving false information about how bad the budget deficit was up until the crisis became unavoidable. They themselves either were incompetent or unable or both to gather the information they needed about how much their deficit was, how much they were borrowing, how much corruption. They didn't know until the economic situation developed to the point that it was irresistible in terms of the crisis being evident. And that's a theme in your text. And yet they were part of the European Union for 34 years. And now, 44, 46 years. And Bulgaria, however, was part of the communist. Bulgaria also being a Balkan country, Bulgaria also being under the Turkish part of the Ottoman Empire, and it's also a very corrupt country. And it's part of socialism, but it's probably not any. Well, it's hard to say that it's more corrupt than Greece, but they're both very corrupt countries in terms of the inability of the state to gather taxes, the level of corruption, of not following the rule of law, of the role of importance of patrimony, and supporting your senior at anything he wants to do or she wants to do, including corrupt practices in terms of not taking the law seriously. And these are both two countries, one under the Western system and one under the communist system, and how much impact did the Western and the communist systems make in changing those cultures, And that's a good argument of the impact of culture. It is very difficult to change a country's culture. It is very, if you consider a country just to be an organization, a big, vast organization that people can feel very intensely emotional about. So, but the European Union does what it can, and it focuses primarily on economic integration. But then when you start talking about human rights, when you start talking about European supervision of tax collection, those are all politically very sensitive topics, because now we're talking about nationalism and emergence. So it's very difficult to directly confront these issues of culture. You got to do it indirectly. You got to do it through, let's make more money by integrating our economy, because who doesn't want more money, right? Everybody wants more money. Everybody wants to become more prosperous. So, and that's how you have to deal with it, because if you deal with the issues of culture directly, you're going to provoke hostility because of the concern about imperialism. You're telling us how you want us to become, and we're not going to become Germans, and we're not going to become Americans, we're Greeks, and there's reasons why we are this way, and you Americans are partly to blame for this, including your intervention and the British intervention during the Cold War. Okay, so did I turn off? Let me see here. So I didn't turn off the video. Can you hear me now? And you know, I see you know, well, we're almost out of time anyway. So let me try to do this. Okay, so let me experiment here, and let me shut down this, and just to turn off the
ability to hear me. And so we go back to built-in microphone. So I think you can hear me now. Can you hear me better, Ella? Is it easier for you to hear me now? Because I'm using the built-in microphone and the built-in speakers. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. It's something to do with with using Bluetooth because all right, but so I hope you could still hear what I was saying. Let me continue on here. You know, you heard quote unquote institutionalized resistance to policy and institutional reform was apparent due to the turmoil involving the implementation of the bailout conditions due to major public policy weaknesses. I mean, to get this money, the Europeans and the Americans insisted that there had to be far-scale revisions and changes in Greek policies, that there needed to be better ways of collecting Greek taxes. You have to make more people pay their taxes in Greece. And of course, in Greek notion, you know, why should I pay my taxes when somebody's going to steal it? If I give my taxes to the government, it's just going to go in somebody's pocket. So I'm a fool if I pay my taxes. How are you going to overcome that institutionalized view of the state that's the product of hundreds of years of development, including imperial control and domination of the state by foreigners like the Turks, where Greeks and Bulgarians and others have come to view the state as something alien and distant to be avoided. You don't pay taxes if you can avoid it because it goes to the bad guys. And so, you know, of course, these countries have been independent from the Turks for 150 years or longer, but still there's a long, and of course, under the communists in Bulgaria, the communists were put in power by the Soviets, by the Soviet Union, and the Americans and the British played a role in interfering in internal Greek politics after the Cold War. And it said, again, there was a military junta that came to power in the late 1960s, suppressed and oppressed young people, college students, tortured people under the Greek colonels. That was the colonels regime. There were a bunch of Greek army colonels who took power, and they were overthrown in 1974 when they were defeated in their effort to unify Cyprus by force with Greece by encouraging an uprising among the Greeks in Cyprus. And then Turkey intervened in Cyprus and occupied the northern part of Cyprus to protect those Turks living in the northern part of Cyprus from being ethnically cleansed. In terms we use today, ethnically cleansed by Turkish nationalism. And that failure caused the Turkish military junta to collapse in 1974, right? So again, but going on here, this trying to change Greece so that, you know, the Greek government is more effective, so that corruption is decreased. So you give incentives for people to change the way that they were socialized, right? To act, and it's really difficult to do, really difficult. And he mentions here, consequently, Europeanization of Greece has involved coercive aspects while shifting the boundaries between what is national and what is European. And you even get a sense of that in the chapter on Greece, that there is this resentment. There was a strong element of resentment, an element of resentment that you come across often in Greek writers talking about Greece, that, you know, my God, the IMF and the European Union, the European Central Bank, they want so many changes to Greece. They want to break down the labor protections for workers. They want to force people to work longer than they can. They want to reduce labor rights. They want a more fluid labor market. So they want workers to be more easily fired if they're no longer needed. This is wrong. Because that typically is one of the elements that these austerity packages, conditionality austerity packages that the IMF and the European Central Bank place on countries, including on Spain and Greece and Portugal, and also on much bigger economically Italy than Greece, that, you know, you want to make the labor market more fluid. You want to make people to work longer so they can't retire when they're 55. Like I have an aunt, right, in Italy. She retired when she was 55 years old. How can you retire when you're 55? And in Greece, you could retire when you were 55 until relatively recently, and that was under pressure from the IMF and the World Bank. And people make their plans around these assumptions that, well, we retire in 55, so I'm going to make my financial plans around that assumption. And then the IMF and the World and the European Central Bank and the European Commission make you change all of those rules that you had planned around as a worker or as a Greek citizen. People would get upset. Right? And so many young Greek people have fled Greece, not fled Greece, but they've left Greece to other parts of the European Union and get a job on levels like you see, for example, among former communist countries like Romania and Bulgaria. You've seen levels of Greek migration to other parts of the European Union to get a job because of the economic suffering in Greece. That many Greeks blame on the European Commission and the European Union and the IMF. Okay. So that's it for today. And I don't know, I'm getting this messages that the connection is unstable. We will try to, I think what I'm going to try to do when I go to the conference, it starts on Wednesday. Well, I'll see what I can do here, see if I can find another place to access the internet. But again, I'm not so certain that the American internet is very, very reliable, because as I told you, when I was in the US, in Ohio at my brother's place, where he works from home on the internet, it went down there too. So one of the benefits of being in Korea, I guess. Anybody have any questions? If not, I'm going to close the class and see you on Friday, okay? Bye.